Hey there, welcome to the channel. I'm Cindy Daychuk with Queen Bee Creations, and we are going to do a little Easter craft. Now, I've been seeing a lot of these heavily decorated eggs using all of the IOD molds and air-dried clay. And let's face it, I sell them, I love them. But I do also know that there's those of you that are asking for me to do some things without the use of those extra tools. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have to buy some specialty items, but I thought this was a good one to maybe trial. I haven't done it before. I have it in my head that I think it will work. So we're going to see together. So the first thing, I have this large plastic egg from the dollar store. Comes in a pack of 4. They're out now. This is from Dollarama by me. What I did do was I put a hole in the bottom. I couldn't be bothered getting the drill out, so I just took the bit and manually put it in. And I'm hoping that this little dowel, there's something rattling around, but it's going to be okay. There we go. What I want is to be able to hold it this way to paint it and then be able to put it upright to dry. The other thing, I'm going to check my stash for just some kind of a candlestick that this sits in. I'm going to paint the candlestick white. Or cream would work, but white because my decoration's going to be white. And I'm kind of looking at having to sort of custom mix a color here because I have this blue, but it's a little more bold. It's a little bolder than I'd like, but I'm going to start with it. And I'm not going to need tons. But I kind of want a bit of a sharp blue. I wanted something bolder than like a duck egg, but I didn't want like bright blue and I didn't want it navy. So this is kind of like a blue iris color from DIY. And this is a Farm Fresh from DIY. So a little bit green. I haven't mixed this before. I'm doing it with you. Right now we're playing and then we'll adjust. I would love to say that I am much more regimented in how I do these things, but I'm not. I just fake them like this. But I think I'm going to need a fair bit of white. All right. And that was Beadboard by DIY. Let's see where we end up. Okay. That's where we end up. What I want is something that's going to contrast okay with white, but not be totally stark. So you can see the difference with where this color goes relative to what we started with. So it's much softer. And you know what? Sometimes, especially when I just need a little bit of paint and I've got more than enough here, I don't want to have to open a whole other big container. I mean, I could have opened maybe Prom Queen by DIY or something and it would have been just perfect. But then I've got a whole open container of Prom Queen. And if I only need a couple of tablespoons, then that just seems to me to be a waste. And so I'd rather just mix up a little bit of paint that I need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a couple of coats. Oh, that's quite lovely. Look at that color. So I'm going to get a couple of coats of this on. I want nice, even coverage of it. I might go looking for something else that needs to be painted in this color since I'm going to have more than I need, but this is great. I mean, really, even one coat seems to be doing the trick. But I'm going to get this coated twice. Let it dry fully. And I'm going to look for a candlestick that this fits into nicely. I'm going to get it painted with a couple of coats of white on it as well. And that's going to be our base. So that's all the behind the scenes stuff happening. the next piece that I want to do, this is the candle stick that I found. So I painted that white, encasement from Fusion. This is my egg, so I think it'll sit nicely up there. I'm gonna worry about that tomorrow. What I wanna do before I leave for the day is I had a napkin and I cut out a little template, which I didn't cut it out by my egg, and that's looking a little large. So I'm gonna cut it down a fair bit, a fair bit. That's a better size. Okay. And what I had done was kind of laid it out on my napkin. So I'm just going to cut that down to size. So again, you could use a piece of a transfer, you know, like a leftover floral that you have, or one of the IOD inlays. I mean, anything like that if you got them. But I'm trying to do this with minimal expense. So I have a little tiny piece of this that I'm going to decoupage on. And I'm decoupaging over blue, so the blue is going to show. I know that. I'm okay with that. It's not always a big deal. So I'm just going to paint some Mod Podge over this. And position my napkin where I need it. Okay, awesome. While I'm at it, I'm just going to decoupage. I'm just going to put the top coat over the whole thing. You can see, because I'm using the DIY paint, that the paint actually darkens when it gets sealed. But I'm going to just get that done while I'm going so that I don't have to worry about the paint being unsealed during the next step. Okay. I've glued this down to the base. I probably, in retrospect, wanted to have this even smaller, but it'll be okay. We'll make it work. Don't worry. So here's the idea. Instead of adding moldings to this, I want to add a bunch of details. And I figured it's going to be easier for me to be turning this when I have a really solid foundation. So I hot glued it on last night. What I'm going to be doing is I am taking spackling. Now I'm just using DAP because I bought this for another project. I had done the textured paintings on canvas in a video here. I'll link to it. And that's dried. It's nice and firm. It's still got some flexibility, and it's white, so kind of a creamy white. So I figure this will be okay. The only thing I'm not sure about is the texture is pretty firm. It's okay for smearing onto a canvas and then adding texture, but I want to pipe it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, and folks, I'm making this up. I'm playing with this. So in my head, I just want to, I'm maybe making up too much, but I don't want to do it twice. So there we go. Okay. So what I want to do is, if you guys have ever like piped a cake and the icing is really firm, you can't get like a nice flow out of it. This is going to be pretty stiff to pipe. So I figured to smooth it out, rather than adding something like water, which may mean that it doesn't dry firmly. Oh, I just broke the seal on that. Don't pick it up by the egg. Okay, we're going to be re-gluing that. But rather than adding water so that maybe it doesn't dry firmly or something, I thought I'd add a top coat. So I'm just using Fusion Tough Coat because there's just a little tiny bit in the bottom of this jar. But I figured, why not add a liquid that is designed to seal, right? It's designed to firm up. So because it's liquid, this will make this more pliable, a little easier to pipe. We'll see if it still hardens, but I figured my odds of it hardening nicely were increased by using a product that ultimately is designed to harden, if that makes sense. So what I am going to do, I'm just using 2 bags, 2 tips. I've got just a little tiny hole, right, that's used for dots and scroll work and stuff like that. And I have a little kind of multiple star shape for some edging, for some bigger work. I'm just using the 2. Okay, that's looking better. I think a little thinner. I don't want it obviously so thin that it's going to droop and not hold its shape. I just don't want to have to be squeezing the heck out of the bag and not getting a nice smooth flow. But you can see this consistency is already softer than it was, so I think that's going to be easier. So what I'm going to do to make it easier for you is re-glue this, obviously, and then pull you overhead so you can see. Don't critique my piping skills. I'm not a cake decorator, so I'm just faking this along with everybody else. So to start, so I have my mixture, my spackle mixture in my piping bag. It's pushed down, twist it a couple of times to keep it from opening up, and then you're going to use your hand to squeeze. What I want to do is just kind of start down here and just do a whole border around my egg. Okay, this might be a little awkward, but I will say that's a pretty good consistency. Not the best little egg shape, a little wonky on the side. Turning the corner was a little more awkward, but it worked. Now I'm deciding what else. I'm going to have to cover this up, and I'm just deciding, do I do, well, I have to go for it. This is where you'd use those IOD molds to put some trim work in there, you know, and I just thought maybe this is an alternative. I get people asking, certainly, for demonstrations on how to use the molds and that sort of thing, but I also get people asking for alternative uses for it. So, all right. I'm just looking as to whether I'm debating putting a whole line down there and kind of adding a little bit of a divider on the egg. Okay, maybe. Why not? I guess you could draw lines on it. Okay, that looks like I'm kind of coming down the back. Air bubble. Okay. It's looking kind of like one of those icing decorated eggs, isn't it? All right, so my other thought with this one was, again, me probably thinking I am more skilled than I am, doing little piped scroll work. So kind of starting out here. And this is why I wanted to have something that was smoother or easier to pipe, because you wanted to have that. See, that was wonky. Just doing a couple little leaves in there, maybe. I don't know. So I'm going to continue to do this around all the rest of the blue. This will need overnight to dry, but you know what? So far, not too bad as an alternative. This is the same day, but we're in the middle of a construction here of the new craft table. So this grungy table is going. It's going to be raised. It's going to have all kinds of storage below it, which would help me clean up and organize a lot of my craft stuff. So I'm so excited. Those of you that hate looking at this mess, though, you know, that's the craft stuff. That's the thrift flip stash. That may still be like that, but I may be in an organizing frenzy, so we'll see what we can do. In the meantime, this has already started to harden, so I can touch it without smushing it, so I think that we are good to go with using this as a medium. Now again, remember I add a little bit of that top coat to be able to get it down to a piping consistency. Couple of things. One, it was awkward and I wasn't the best piper. But that said, I would use a smaller nozzle tip for this. I think it's a little bit fat and clunky for the size of this. So, you know, I was using what I had. If I was going to be doing a lot of these, then I would certainly do it. I like the scroll work on it. I think that that's a really pretty addition. And again, this was all done with the hope, the expectation of doing something like this without the need to purchase any molds. Now, I love the molds. I have tons of molds. I sell the molds. So I have nothing against them. But I do know that as much as I get requests to show me using the molds, I also get requests from people saying, I don't have the money to invest in them. Do you have a cheaper alternative to get a similar look? This is my cheaper alternative to get a similar look. So I know there's a lot of people that are doing the ovals with the little frames molds, and they're adding embellishment from a bunch of the other molds, the trimmings molds, things like that. I added little beading along here using the one little piping nozzle. So definitely a cute alternative, and one that I think with a little practice could look way better than what I did this time. But I do these things the first time in front of you guys. So, you know, it's practice makes perfect. My next one would be better. Hopefully you learn from my mistakes and your first one is better. That would be ideal. Thanks for tuning in as always, guys. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Until then, take care.